Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. You asked for it, and now we'll decide and confirm the Superman chronological timeline as your geek history lesson is now in session. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason Super Inman, and you'll notice that I'm all by myself for this episode, but that doesn't matter because this is still the Mind University. This is the podcast where we take one subject, one book, one character, and tell you all about them in a little bit less than an hour. And today is a very special episode because this is a highly requested episode. This is a follow-up to our Batman chronological timeline. We did it a couple years back where we sort of decided we need to decide just how old Batman is. And a lot of fans were like, hey, you should do one for Superman. And to do one about Superman, I needed a person not from Canada, but a person from another Commonwealth country. A very special guest, a very special Kryptonian, you might say. He portrayed Seg-El, the grandfather of Superman, for 2 seasons on Sci-Fi's Krypton. He's an actor, and he's a huge Superman nerd. Please welcome my co-host for today's episode, Mr. Cameron Cuffe.
Hi, guys. How's it going, mate?
It's going really well. Thank you so much for joining me, Cameron.
My absolute pleasure, man. We've been talking about doing this for a long time because I loved the Batman episode.
Let's talk about that to our listeners. We've been trying to record this episode for maybe a year and a half, 2 years, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's probably closer to 2 years, man. The thing is, like, Jason was my first ever Comic-Con was 2017, and Jason was sort of the first friend I made in Hollywood. And obviously, we bonded over comic books and talking about comic books and. I'd listened to the podcast before and I'd heard the Batman timeline, and the exercise of taking so much continuity and putting it into a chronological order was really fascinating to me as a fan and really fun to listen to. And I was really excited about doing something like this for Superman as well.
Yes, and Ashley, of course, when she learned of your big desire to do this episode, she graciously bowed out and was like, no,
very kind.
Let the real Superman nerds get to this.
Fair enough. Hopefully it's in good hands with us.
That's what I heard. Actually, I spoke to her right before we began this recording, and she said that she was very excited about this because usually, she's in Geek History Lessons, and she's like, oh, this is going to be like the first Geek History lesson I'm going to get to listen to as a fan.
Oh, yeah. Well, that'd be lovely.
Yeah.
Hopefully not too terrible.
All right. So, Cameron, hopefully we can hold the bar to her standards, which are very excellent. Now, let's learn a little bit about your Superman bona fides. Now, I think you automatically get a big pass because you have played a Kryptonian, and that puts you in a very special circle of people.
Yes.
But where did your Superman fandom start?
Truthfully, it's as long as I can remember. It's sort of like asking someone when was the first time you knew about Santa Claus. It's like he's a character that's so big, he's always kind of just present in your life. And that's the way it was for me. I grew up with the animated series. I grew up in the 90s, and it was the time for all of that. Bruce Timm, Andrea Romano, and I had obviously the Christopher Reeve movies. And then around the age of 9, I really started to get into the comic books too. But I think growing up with those animated series adventures gave kids such a great sort of 101 intro into the world of the DC universe. And that for me was the thing that made me a Superman fan. And then as I got further and further into the comics and understood that the mythology was even far deeper than the shows went, I just fell in love with it even more. And Superman was always the character that spoke most to me. And I saw him as someone who thinks that Superman is an aspirational character even for himself, that he's this guy who can do incredible things and chooses to share his gifts with the world. I think that was a really wonderful message for me, to see someone who was so powerful and choose to use his gifts for the good of everyone.
Well, that's awesome, man. I'm very excited to hear that backstory, because that means that this is just going to be an amazing episode. I mean, as you know, and as all the listeners know, I mean, I come from the land of Kansas. I grew up on a farm. So Superman is sort of, I think, to all people that live in, I think, the rural American Midwest, this sort of that guy that, oh, he did do it. He did go on to better things, and I can too. And look at how good he does it. You know, how well he does and lives his life, and how inspirational he is. So like, yeah, I almost like feel like Superman, even though he's a fictional character, like he is like from my home. Like he's like, oh yeah, he's one of those guys. Like I have this level of Superman that I don't know many other people have. So that's my bond with the character. So this is going to be very exciting. So everyone out there, this is how this is going to work. Cameron and I are each going to give our chronological timelines of Superman. We can ignore or include whatever continuity we like. It's our prerogative. We'll both start with Superman at whatever age we want, but we will determine that when he puts on the suit, we're going to basically call that Superman Year One. You can talk about as much of Superman before or after as you want. And then we'll go as close as we like until we both determine his current age. Now, Cameron will go first, I'll go second. And just to note, all of this is our opinions. There are no rights. There are no wrongs. Either way, should be really fun. And just a quick note, it's impossible to mention every single Superman storyline. So
absolutely,
if we didn't slot something in here, we just didn't have the time, or me personally, there were some storylines where I was like, well, I'm not a huge fan of that storyline, so that's the reason why I'm not going to include it, or I can't fit that storyline into my timeline.
100%. You know, there's over 80 years of story here. And obviously things have been changed so much. We're on, the fifth or sixth different iteration of a certain villain's origin or whatever it might be. So we did have to sort of choose what we loved best. But also I tried to work in for my timeline that if there's a particular story that you like from a particular area of Superman continuity, I tried to work in time slots where you could conceivably fit that stuff in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, this is going to be very interesting because the greatest thing about this, and it was something that we discovered when we did the Batman chronological timeline, go listen to it, everybody.
Great episode.
Thank you. It shows you a lot about how that person thinks about Superman. And that is kind of fascinating because, again, we all look at these fictional characters in different ways. Also, everyone out there, don't forget that we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. It's where you can support the podcast. And Cameron's going to stick around and do a bonus episode with us. We're going to be talking about some of his favorite Superman stories. So if you like his timeline, I think you're going to want to listen to that episode. And that's only available on patreon.com/Jawiin. But one more thing, before we get to talk about the comic books of DC Comics, I want to tell everybody out there that don't forget that Ashley Victoria Robinson's and I's new comic book, Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio, is now available for pre-order on Amazon and at your local comic book shop or bookstore. And if you like The Rocketeer and Men in Black, then I think you're going to love our new all-ages comic. We're also holding a pre-order contest where one lucky person who pre-orders the book and sends in their proof of purchase to jupiterjetcomic@gmail.com, they're going to win a bunch of exclusive art prints and have a character named after them in Jupiter Jet Volume 3. So if you've ever wanted a comic book character named after you, all you got to do is pre-order Jupiter Jet, send us the proof of purchase, and we'll pick one of those people at random. So pre-order Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio and make sure you enter that contest. So, Cameron.
Yes, sir.
The time has come. The crisis has been rebooted, however you want to start this. The hand has reached through at the beginning of time, and Batman and Jon Stewart are watching, animated Jon Stewart and animated Batman are watching this hand come in. They're resetting the timeline, and now we learn about a person named Kon-El. Let's hear your Superman timeline, sir.
Here we go. Without further ado, the Superman timeline. And I apologize in advance. Okay. That's always the best way to start.
Yes.
Age 0. Kal-El is born on the planet Krypton to Jor-El and Lara Lorvan in the city of Kryptonopolis. Age 1. Krypton explodes. Oh. Kal-El is rocketed to Earth, where he lands in Smallville, Kansas, and is discovered by Jonathan and Martha Kent. Age 8. We have the Harvester incident from Secret Origins. This is the incident where Clark saves Lana. They're playing a game of hide and seek. She gets lost in the cornfields. And Clark runs as a harvester is coming to slice up the corn and saves Lana, and the blades of the harvester break on his skin.
Now, it's funny. I love that you call it harvester. We would call that a combine.
A combine. But yeah, so I was it's like, is combine harvester, is that the word they use here for it as well?
Yeah,
okay, good.
So
it's a combine harvester incident. Well, there you go. We got the genuine knowledge right there, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate that. Yes, and I think this is a really important moment for Clark, because not only is it really does it affirm the fact that he really feels the need to help. He can't see someone in danger and not act. But also this is really, I think for him, like, he's strong and he's fast and he knows that. But this moment when the blades of a combine harvester break on his skin is a real moment where he realizes how different he is.
So I'm going to ask you a little bit of a question here, Cameron.
Of course. So
you've put in Secret Origin. Of course, we know that there are several Superman timelines, like there's the Man of Steel and Secret Origin and Birthright. Do you lean Secret Origin as your like Superman origin?
Well, I'll say it's definitely my favorite. It's the one that I feel most close to, but I definitely take moments from all of those stories and work it into the origin.
Yeah, and I don't want to get spoilers for future stuff. I was just curious.
For sure. Yeah, I think definitely in terms of these early years, that's where I lean most.
Nice.
For sure.
All right, so that was age 8?
Age 8.
Okay.
So age 9, Jonathan and Martha reveal the rocket. And they tell Clark where they found him. And we again have a scene from Secret Origin, which is that really wonderful scene where, the hologram shows up. Clark is immensely freaked out. He runs off into the fields. Jonathan finds him, and Clark says, "I don't want to be an alien. I just want to be Clark Kent. I just want to be your son." And Jonathan says, "You are my son, no matter what." And I think that is such an important Superman moment. So this is, him realizing that he is not from the planet Earth. But again, like he doesn't understand Kryptonian. He doesn't know how to read it. He doesn't know how to speak the dialect. So he sees the hologram of Jor-El and Lara, but he doesn't know really who they are or anything really about Krypton at this point. Okay. Age 13, Clark dons his first disguise, and it's not a suit. He dons his first pair of glasses, which are made by Martha Kent to help him with his developing heat vision. From the glass of the spaceship, which obviously his heat vision can't penetrate. So he doesn't have to be worried about not being able to control his heat vision. I can't remember where I got that from. I know it's in Superman True Brit, which was written by John Cleese. But I know it's also in main continuity comics. I just really like that touch. And I also like the idea that Clark starts wearing glasses pretty young.
That's funny. It is in a bunch of various Superman origins, but can't remember what specific one it is.
Yeah. Age 14, a time sphere opens up outside of Smallville High. The Legion of Superheroes shows up. Then I have in all bold capitals, Legion/Superboy/Silver Age Adventures. Clark's time as Superboy, like wearing the costume, I think is really important to his development. And so I'm going to say between the ages of 14 and 17, Clark has Legion, sort of Superboy, Silver Age Adventures.
Is he wearing the costume of Superboy at this point?
He is wearing the costume of Superboy. He's wearing the flight ring, which is how he flies. But in those years, at age 16, Clark starts to date Lana Lang. He also meets Lex Luthor and is exposed to kryptonite for the first time at a state fair. At the age of 70, which is also a moment from Secret Origins, at the age of 17, Saturn Girl wipes Clark's memory. The Legion years feel like a dream to him. So he loses all knowledge of the future, but also it vaguely feels familiar to him.
Yes.
As it would like a place he visited in a dream. So he has all the confidence that those years gave him, but he doesn't have the precise memory. Also, at age 17, Lana decides to leave Smallville to go and see the world. And this was in, I think, Greg Pak and Aaron Kuder's run.
Yeah, they're going to do the New 52.
Yes.
It's a great run, by the way.
Really great run. And I loved the idea that Lana was this character who sort of said, like, the world's bigger than Smallville, and I want to go and see it. I want to go and see what I can do for the world. And you, Clark, you have to see the world too. Come with me. And he's not ready at that point in time. But it's also this year that Pa Kent gives Clark what I call the great power, great responsibility talk. which is him sort of saying definitively, after all of these years of advice, you have these incredible gifts and you should share them with the world. One day, the world is going to need you. And so this is sort of where it lays that seed for the idea of Superman. And this is a really important talk because 1 year later, Jonathan Kent dies of a heart attack.
Okay, so how old is Clark when Jonathan dies?
Clark is 17, 18.
Okay.
Let's say 18.
All right, interesting.
Because at age 18, Clark decides to leave Smallville and he enrolls at Met-U, where he studies journalism. And this, again, in parentheses and in bold, I have the Blur / T-shirt Superman years. And so I wanted to obviously pay tribute to Smallville. And I really liked a lot of elements of Grant Morrison's run on Action Comics in the early days of the New 52.
Yeah, where he's T-shirt Superman, yeah.
Exactly, and it brings
really
him much more to a street-level hero that he's fighting for social justice as much as like massive world-ending events. And it's in these years that the Clark's sense of right and wrong deepens. He gains a greater appreciation of the fight for truth and justice. But also living in this huge city, he comes to understand even more that if he's going to protect the world, he needs to go out and experience and understand it. So in this period of time between sort of 18 and 20, we have those sort of T-shirt Superman years, but no one really sees him. He's kind of like an urban legend. He hasn't appeared publicly. No one really gets a good look at him, and no one truly believes in Superman. It's very, very small scale superheroics. So at the age of 20, Clark decides to take his final years at Met-U abroad, and he travels the world, going to places like Africa, Asia, the Middle East. And here we have what I'd call Birthright and other stories.
Yes.
So here I imagine that he's getting university credits by writing travel and correspondent pieces for the Daily Star in Metropolis. It is also in these years between the ages of 20 and 22 that Clark learns to fly.
You have him be a late starter on the flight. That's interesting. You're kind of alluding back to Smallville.
Because, I imagine that, there was the tornado scene from Secret Origins where he kind of flies for the first time, and he has the ability to leap tall buildings in a single bound. This is where he really learns how to control it. He always had this ability, but he never really understood it before these years. So after he learns how to fly, he meets Bruce Wayne for the first time in a place called Nanda Parbat. Was it a Batman Superman comic? I can't remember. Maybe it was a 0-year issue.
I believe, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe it was during J. Michael Straczynski's Grounded storyline where they did a flashback issue.
Yes.
And that's where I believe it happened.
And I kind of like the idea that at the same time as Bruce is on his journey to become Batman, he crosses paths with a young Clark Kent who is on his path towards becoming Superman. And they have their first team up. And I really like that. Also in these years, he meets Laurie Lamaris. He also, and this period of time culminates both in the building of the Fortress of Solitude, talking to Jor-El, understanding what Krypton is. And this year ends with Mark Kent making the suit.
Oh, so Superman year one, how old is he?
So in Superman year one, at the age of 23, Clark returns to Metropolis and gets a job at the Daily Planet. He meets Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen for the first time. And as rumors of the Batman of Gotham swirl around, Lois Lane ends up in a helicopter incident where she and the crew are rescued by none other than Superman. And this is the first appearance. I'm taking from Secret Origin here.
Nice.
And this is when, Superman is in the broad daylight. He's wearing the costume. This is Superman. So in this year, the events of Secret Origin and sort of the end of Birthright occur, where Lex Luthor sort of frames a Kryptonian invasion.
Yes.
We're going to say happens during this year too. That's year one Superman. Year two Superman, 24. This is the year in which Superman for All Seasons and Superman Confidential occur.
Yes, so Superman Confidential is that's when he first figures out how to call it kryptonite, I believe.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that first storyline. It's a very young Superman. Also in this year, we're going to say that Krypto lands in an experimental Kryptonian rocket. And he goes to live in Smallville. And also, this is kind of the year where the Justice League individually meet. They're not together as a team, but they're all having their own sort of individual origins, and they're starting to hang out for the first time. The first World's Finest team-up happens, where he meets and works with Batman. I'm going to borrow that from the animated series. We're going to go with that storyline. I think that was really fun.
That's totally fine.
Also in this year, he meets and briefly dates Wonder Woman. And also... the first Flash Superman charity race occurs.
Oh, in Superman Year 2.
In Superman Year 2.
All right. That's a very busy year 2, but I love it.
It's a very busy year, but it's also a fun year 2. You know, he's meeting these people, and ultimately they all sort of, you know, because Clark is Clark, they all wind up really good friends, except for Batman, because he has no friends apparently. And so between the ages of 24 and 28, I have a section that I've called The Young Superman Adventures. So this is sort of the classic Superman status quo. Lois and Clark have a great professional rivalry and a friendship, but obviously Lois is in love with Superman. And while Clark loves her, their relationship in this period of time is ultimately based upon mutual respect and collaboration. So really any story that you want to tell with the classic status quo of Superman, Clark is the only one who knows about Superman. His identity is a secret. Lois doesn't know about it. They're both still young and single. So in here I have, you know, I think the majority of the animated series occurs. I think in this sort of period of time, he meets Livewire, Bizarro, and a lot of his rogues, Metallo, for example, who I think he would have met actually in year 1. And now there are a couple hard dates I want to set in this period of time. At the age of 25, Darkseid invades. This is where we have, from the New 52, the Justice League origin story. And I'm not sure if it's the best Justice League origin story there is of the great pantheon of Justice League stories we have out there, but it is a very clean start to the Justice League now being a thing. Yeah. So that happens at 25. At 26, Superman and Lois Lane start a clandestine romantic relationship. Also, when Clark is 27, Supergirl lands. We have the events of Batman, Superman, Supergirl. Nice. And she is 16. So you have a Supergirl who's sort of young enough to be a different generation from Clark. And it's also weird that he is an adult whilst, you know, she's a teenager, but she's used to him being her baby cousin. I like that sort of stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, at the age of 28, this is Superman Year 6. Superman reveals to Lois that he and Clark Kent are one and the same. They briefly split up, but work through it together so well that they move in with each other and they end up being stronger than ever in their relationship, which is good because this is the year that Chris Kent shows up and the events of the Man of Steel story happen. Also in, so obviously Chris Kent takes him in with Lois, and then Zod and Non and Us are sort of followed through the Phantom Zone, and it's a Kryptonian invasion year. It doesn't happen over the space of the whole year. It's probably more a few months, but it's a big moment in his life for sure. It's also in this year that Clark tells a recently fired Dick Grayson the story of Nightwing and Flamebird. Oh, and what year do you have that happen? So this is Superman Year 6, and Clark is roughly 28, so Dick is 18. Nice. All right, cool. At the age of 31, things start getting real bad real quick. This is Superman Year 9. It starts off happily. Clark proposes to Lois Lane and then is killed by Doomsday. In the same year. In the same year. Talk about a real downer. So in this year, we have the death of Superman. We have Funeral for a Friend. We have Reign of the Superman, which I put in parentheses, Year of the Superman, because we talked about this before. Mm-hmm. This is one of those really important moments. I really think this period of time has to be a year. Superman has to be gone for a while. Obviously, we have the origins of Superboy, Kon-El, who will eventually become Kon-El, Steel, Cyborg, Superman, and the Eradicator. Also in this period of time where Clark is dead, interestingly enough, Lois Lane discovers that she is pregnant. Oh. It's a big story there. So about 6 months after, quote unquote, dying, Clark returns. He's got the black suit, he's got the beard, the hair, and he's severely depowered. He helps Steel and Supergirl and Superboy defeat Cyborg, Superman, and the Eradicator. And in this sort of for the rest of this year, we're going to go back to classic stories like 1 Year Later, like Superman Blue, like some of the Greg Pak T-shirt Superman years were, again, much more street level. And this period of time is where you can tell all the stories where Superman's powers aren't quite working right, because he sustained so much damage and had so many injuries after Doomsday's fight with him that his powers start to manifest and return in strange ways, or he's severely depowered. And I liked a lot of those stories, and I think that's an important period of time. And I also think in this period of time, because he's got the beard and the hair, people see a depowered Superman and they're like, well, there's 5 other guys flying around pretending to be Superman right now, so who can say if this is the real one or not?
Yeah, who trusts this guy? Yeah.
Exactly. So we don't really have an official return. The next year, at the age of 32, the Kents moved just outside of Metropolis to Hamilton County. A little fun fact, my Metropolis is in Delaware. I've decided that it's geographically in Delaware, across the Delaware River from Gotham City in New Jersey.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so where do you see Hamilton being then?
I see Hamilton County, in the comics, it says, is it 300 or 400 miles?
I want to say it's 300.
That is a lot of miles.
Not for if you're going into the Metropolis every day, that's an impossible trip.
If you're and the thing is, I like the idea of Clark returning before Superman, because I think he does take back his job at the Daily Planet, at least for a while. And then when Lois gets sort of later on in the stage of pregnancy, they decide that they should move to the countryside. She wants to start writing some nonfiction books. And he wants to sort of go back to a more rural lifestyle of, fixing up a house and getting ready for the baby. And so I'm gonna say that Metropolis is maybe 50 miles from Hamilton County.
I think that's fair. So it's sort of like it would be like it's the town you escape from Metropolis to for the weekend.
Totally. Yeah. If you lived in New York, it would be the equivalent of living in like New Jersey or upstate or something like that. Or
going to like the Hamptons.
Yeah, you can still see friends and stuff like that, but it's a weekend trip more than you're not doing a daily commute.
No, yeah.
So here we have the events of I believe it was Dan Jurgens who did Clark and Lois?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I like to imagine Clark is still because he can't help himself. He always wants to do as much as he possibly can. He always wants to help. So he's doing some more clandestine kind of Superman stuff in this year. Which he really feels that he has to do because one of the worst events to befall the DC Universe happens in this year, which is Lex Luthor becomes president. Mm-hmm. So Superman has to come back. And in this year, dare I say it, Superman returns.
Oh, all right.
The age of 33, and this is Superman year 11.
Oh, perfection, my friend.
Yeah,
we should talk about it. So there's a lot of, just to make it clear to everyone why I'm reacting to that way is because 33 is of course classically in Christianity the age that Jesus Christ comes back, and that's the year that he was resurrected. And I know Zack Snyder was referencing that's when Clark is 33 in Man of Steel, and a lot of other places like 33 is sort of the magic year for Superman.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I chose 33 for something else, so that's very good that you chose it for that.
And so I absolutely promise you this was because I did a big timeline to begin with, and I had to reshuffle some stuff about. And this was not intentional at all. This was just the best place for it to be.
It kind of seems like kismet, my friend.
It certainly does. And this year is one of the biggest years for Superman. This is our world's at war.
Okay.
We have all of this story happening in this period of time. At the age of 34, our Worlds at War is over, and the events of Public Enemies, one of my favorite Superman stories, takes place.
Yeah.
And Luthor's presidency ends. Just putting it out there in the universe that bad presidencies can end. Okay, so this year is at the age of 35, which is Superman year 12 or 13. This is probably the busiest, most wild year, and I've titled this year one word, which is crisis.
All right.
And this is where I am, because this is the single biggest problem I had with this timeline. How do you manage the crises? Because Superman is pretty much the center of every single crisis. because he is, the core of the DC universe in so many ways. He's the guy. So there has to be a crisis. And I imagine in this year, it starts with Identity Crisis, and then you have Infinite Crisis, and then you have Crisis on Multiple Earths, and then you have Time Crisis, the video game. You have Crisis, every single crisis you could possibly imagine happens in this year. It is the Anti-Monitor, comes to the DC universe, and everything gets really, really messed up for a very long time. And this year is just literally the DC heroes trying to put the multiverse back together, which they succeed in doing.
So I assume that would also be the year, if you were doing that, that's the year that Barry Allen dies.
That's the year that Barry Allen dies. I also imagine that Superboy dies this year.
Okay, cool.
But he comes back 1 year later, age of 36. And Superman is the age of 36. Superboy comes back to life and moves from Hawaii to Smallville. Connor Kent's one of my favorite characters. I just wanted to put that little note in there.
Oh, nice.
Also, I think I missed an event back when he was 32. When Clark is 32, Jonathan Kent is born. When they're in Hamilton County.
So Clark is 32 when his son is born. Okay, got it.
When his son is born, yes.
Okay, and then what year are we in now?
So to go back to catching up, we're age 36. Superboy has come back to life after the crisis, and he's moved to Smallville. Okay. And Clark and Lois and a 4-year-old Jonathan decide to move back to Metropolis.
Nice. Okay, so Jonathan gets like his younger childhood in Hamilton, and then his later years in Metropolis.
Yeah, he has like his fond memories of growing up as a little boy in Hamilton County. But he starts going to school and stuff back in Metropolis. Clark and Lois are both back at the Daily Planet working full time. And at the age of 37, we have another one of my favorite Superman stories, which is Brainiac. So the events of Brainiac happen, which means at the ages of 38 and 39, we have the events of New Krypton. And the War of the Supermen, which is a huge year for Superman and ends up being immensely demoralizing, and which sort of gets us in a good place for Superman at the age of 40, which is when Superman for Tomorrow happens.
Oh, the Jim Lee, Brian Azzarello story.
Exactly. Now, this period of time between the age of sort of 36 and 41, you have 5 years where you can have what I call the established Superman adventures, which is he's married to Lois, and it's that version of the status quo. So whatever story you want to fit in from that period of time, it'll work here. I think the fact that John is present for these stories, it doesn't take away from the emotional, truth of the story. If anything, I think it enhances it that Jonathan Kent is around. Yeah. I think it's a great idea for him to be around for Superman for Tomorrow and stuff like that. So at the age of 41, we have the events of Superman Reborn, and a lot of those really great rebirth stories. I'm talking particularly about the Tomasi and Gleason run, which I think was one of the best Superman runs we've had in modern times.
Agreed.
And also in this period of time when Clark is 41, which is, let's do the maths on this, year approximately 18 of him being Superman. Jonathan is 9 years old, and he becomes Superboy. So he starts going out on adventures. You have the Dinosaur Island story, and he starts, being Superman's sidekick and learning how to be a superhero. And my timeline ends where we agreed was a good jumping off point at the age of 44, when Clark Kent decides to reveal his identity to the world, which I'm sure will be the case for the next year or two before it inevitably gets scrapped in favor of something else.
Which is always what happens.
Which is always, comics, the stories always continue, and that's a wonderful thing.
Nice. So, so how many years has he been Superman again? Just remind us.
So he's 44 when he reveals his identity to the world. He started being Superman at the age of 23. So he's been approximately Superman for 21 years now.
44 and 21. That's very interesting. It's interesting. Wow, Cameron, great job.
Thank you very much.
That was fantastic. It's so interesting, again, because I will tell you, we are very similar and we are very different in a lot of ways.
I had a feeling that we would be. Like, I know there are particular origin stories, for example, that you love.
Yes.
That you're going to work in there for sure. But I also listened to the Batman timeline episode before this, and I admired Ashley's stance, which is, some of this I have to just make it work because this is my best version of this character. And I completely understand that. When you're dealing with
when you're dating Superman.
When you're dating 80 years of continuity, Jason, that's what it feels like sometimes. It really does.
I get it. That's what it does feel like reading comic books sometimes.
Oh my God, dude, tell me about it. Because there are moments, there are definitely particular comics that I read where I just fall in love with comics all over again. And then particular, series, like moments in time where you're just like, oh God, I don't know. Like, is this the right thing to keep going kind of thing? It is very funny that way. But yeah, so there has to be a certain amount of stuff which just remains headcanon. But for me, I think it makes sense that Clark is 44 and he's been Superman for approximately 21 years when he decides to reveal who he is to planet Earth. And
we talked in conversations before this as well. Like, it's hard to think about Superman being in his early 30s and having a son.
Totally.
You're like,
yeah.
Like the big factor in that is Jonathan Kent. But I thought you did a great job, man. That's really good.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I know it was a heck of an exercise, but it was really good fun. And it was the way I started was I was thinking, right, what are my favorite in continuity Superman stories, and just started from there. But yeah, it's a heck of a task. Can't wait to hear yours.
Okay, so now is the time to reveal my Superman timeline, everybody. And just to sort of set the air here, I lean into the Man of Steel John Byrne origin. Great choice. One of my favorites. It's one of the first Superman comic books I read when I was a kid. So that's, I think, the reason why it's so good. But I really love Man of Steel John Byrne and Superman Birthright. And I kind of think that John Byrne did a really good condensing. So I have a lot of specific issues here from the John Byrne run. So for me,
gotcha.
Age 0, Kal-El is born on Krypton. That happened in the Man of Steel 1. I agree with you. Age 1, Krypton explodes, and Kal-El lands in Kansas during winter.
Lovely.
Yeah, because that's how they hide that Martha had a baby in secret.
Yes.
Because they were all snowed in and stuff like that. So like Kal-El lands in winter. And I believe Clark Kent's birthday is like April or June-ish is when it actually is, which is to also reference the first issue of Action Comics coming around that same time. In age 5, Clark is enrolled in Eisenhower Elementary School. That's where he meets Lana Lang, Pete Ross, Chloe Sullivan, and Kenny Braverman, who will later go on to become Conduit.
Very cool.
At age 8, a bull tramples Clark, and Jonathan Kent sees that Clark is completely unharmed. That actually happens in Man of Steel 1. Also, very cool. In his age 8 is the first time that Clark lifts a pickup truck above his head. Martha Kent witnesses this in Man of Steel 1. I'm a big fan, kind of like what I don't like baby Superman having his powers immediately.
Yes. Yeah, of course. I think it's the kind of thing of they discover it slowly. Like when he's very little, he's almost like a normal baby. And then all of a sudden they realize that he's very strong, or he can't get his shots to the doctor anymore because the needles won't break through his skin.
Exactly. So like he got all his early shots and everything like that. So but I think by the time he's about 8, that's when, and especially during puberty, that's when his full powers come in because he's been around the sun enough.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Now, one difference I have in my timeline is there is no official Superboy in my timeline because I think that takes away from the power of the original appearance of Superman, but I'm going to have my cake and I'm going to eat it too because...
I was doing the same thing for sure.
Age 14, Clark Kent meets high school senior Lex Luthor. They bond until Lex's lab accident where she loses his hair, and Lex immediately leaves town. Clark does not see him again for several years, and that is also Clark's first exposure ever to kryptonite.
Gotcha. Question. I imagine that Lex Luthor is probably 4 years older than Clark. Do you see him the same way?
That's, you know, for me, to make sort of the Smallville high school thing work, that's kind of why I say, like, if Clark is a high school freshman, he's 14, then Lex is 18.
Yeah.
Now, I know in many comic books, especially the John Byrne run, Lex probably has at least 10 years on Clark, but
yeah, if not 20.
Yeah, I really like the one thing that I think the Smallville television show did really well is I love how it brought back the Silver Age idea that Lex and Clark knew each other from Smallville.
Yeah. And I like the idea of them being peers.
I do. I like that as well. But you kind of have to be careful with it because Lex is so smart. Otherwise, he would figure it out. So to me, it's like if he leaves before, if Clark is a freshman, they had a couple interactions. They were maybe friends for like 3 months. So
yeah.
You know, so like not enough to where Clark would remember this guy for the rest of his life, but also enough to where Lex would completely forget that he ever met Clark Kent.
Yeah, would see someone like Clark as being so insignificant that he would never remember him.
Yeah, it would just be like, who are you? Which to me explains why later in Superman Birthright, why Lex is like, who are you?
Yeah.
For
sure, that makes sense.
Yeah. At age 16, Clark is confronted by 3 teenagers, Lightning Lad, Cosmic Boy, and Saturn Girl of the Legion of Superheroes. They give him the Superboy costume. They take him to the 31st century where he spends approximately 6 months of his 16th year. Of course, he is brought back right back to the point where he left.
Gotcha.
This is where, for me, the entirety of the Silver Age Legion of Superhero stories happen. Is in this 6 months. When, of course, he is returned, Saturn Girl wipes his brain of all of these adventures. But I like your idea, so I'm going to steal it from you, that he sort of like has it as a dream in his head. So if he ever sees, if he sees the Legion again, he's going to be like, oh, I know who you are.
Oh, my God. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had that idea. And also that's why I wanted Clark to spend his first year on Krypton, too, in the sense that he won't remember it at all, but whenever he sees something Kryptonian, it feels deeply familiar.
Yeah.
I definitely want to preserve that. Yeah, that's so funny. We had the exact same idea.
Because it's a fun idea. Like I like it. I like it, and I also hate it. It also complicates Superman's history at the same time.
100%. Yeah, it really is that situation where you have to have your cake and eat it. Like, because you can't ignore it. It's so important, but at the same time, it does sort of. Like, because the interesting thing is when you put it all in one timeline, you're kind of putting it all in one story, right? So like what narratively holds the most weight is something you have to consider when you're making these timelines. Yeah.
Age 17, Clark learns he can fly for the very first time, which is something that we see in Man of Steel #1. Age 18 is his senior year in high school. In the fall of that year, or excuse me, in that year, his father reveals Clark's rocket ship origin for the very first time. He gives him the "You're here for a reason, son." And shortly after his high school graduation, Jonathan Kent dies of a heart attack at the Kent farm. Yeah. And this is the reason that makes Clark Kent leave Smallville to travel the world. It's interesting because I went back and forth with this because I do love Pa Kent being alive during the John Byrne run and John and Martha. But I also feel that like Jonathan Kent's death really galvanizes Clark in such a way that I think without it, he doesn't become Superman. Yeah, I think, that I definitely agree. And I think for Clark to have that moment of like, it's in the Donna Superman films, which is him just being able to sort of sit there and say there are so many things that I can do. I can do all of these things, and I still couldn't save him. Mm-hmm. That is such an essential moment for Superman that he's always trying to save everyone, and I think that is sort of the ultimate moment for that. I completely agree. Now, and it was funny, like because this was a conversation we had before too. We were like, how many Kents are alive? In your version of it, and I love the idea, like you, that. That Superman is kind of the only hero that still has his parents around and loves them and, hangs out with them all the time. But I do agree. I think, Jonathan Kent and his sacrifice means so much to who Superman's going to be. I'm going to put this out here for any of the future writers out there, or perhaps the writers recording this podcast. I would love to see some alternate version of Superman in the future where Martha is the one that dies and Jonathan is the one that lives throughout his career. I think it would give it a completely different spin.
I think Superman would be so screwed.
I do too.
Because Jonathan's great. He's great at giving advice, but I think Martha's the one who's like, you look thin. You need to. Are you taking care of yourself? You know, and she's the one who's constantly saving Superman. It would be really interesting to see how that would affect him.
Well, it'd be interesting, too, because there would be certain storylines where, like, Superman is fighting the parasite, and he'd come home to Pa, and he'd be like, God, I can't beat this parasite guy. And Pa's he'd be like, do you know how many fields I plowed today? Quit your...
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I love that. That's great.
All right, so now this is
there was one thing I forgot to mention from... There are definitely going to be other things, but I liked the idea because the other thing about Jonathan Kent is that I would love to have had him live to see Clark be Superman. But my way around that is he does give him the Interlac best dad in the world hat.
Yeah.
Still when he's Superboy. So like Saturn Girl doesn't wipe Jonathan Kent's memories because she knows that she can trust him. So I like the idea that John knows what he's going to be before he passes.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that too. Now, here is where we come to the biggest divergence in our timelines. For my timeline, from ages 18 to 22, a 5-year period, Clark is just traveling the world. Because I do believe that Clark really does go on a sojourn, and he secretly saves people. This is he's as the Blur, the red blue blur, whatever you want to call it. Yep. And he wanders the globe as sort of a free agent. And during this time, he works for many online news sites, including the Daily Star. But also, I think during this time, he's also getting his basic credits out of the way online for college. But he travels. He travels through Europe, which is confirmed. I also included that he travels to Nanda Parbat and meets Bruce Wayne. He also has the adventure in West Africa that is seen in Superman Birthright #1 during this time. But this is just him. It's a thing of like, just like Bruce Wayne, like I think it really does help Superman if he goes out into the world and sees all kinds of people, because Superman is very much a character of the world, I think, more than
he belongs to everyone. It's that is so true of who he is. I think if he is the champion of Earth, right?
Yes,
which
not
means
just
that
America.
He belongs to everyone. And I think all of humanity is so inspirational to him. So of course he'd want to go and see it.
Now, through age 23 and 24, he moves back to Metropolis and enrolls full-time at the University of Metropolis as a journalism major, where he finishes his bachelor's degree. It is during this time that Clark meets Lori Lemaris, a fellow student at the University of Metropolis. That was confirmed in Superman #12.
Nice.
And then at age 25, this is Superman year 1. He's 25 years old, because this is my homage to Smallville, because he's 25 when he becomes Superman at the end of Smallville. This is where Clark saves the space plane over Metropolis. Lois Lane writes the famous article that names him Superman, and Ma Kent sews together his suit. He makes his debut. He inspires a new heroic age, including many of the other heroes. Clark gets a job at the Daily Planet. Clark fights Metallo for the very first time. And at the end of Superman year 1, that is when the Lex Kryptonian invasion scene in Superman Birthright happens, at the very end of Superman year 1.
It's funny that we have that in the exact same place.
Well,
end of year 1.
That is one of those things where I've always felt, ever since I've read Superman Birthright, I've kind of been like, Superman Birthright would make the perfect movie reboot for Superman, because that Kryptonian invasion allows you to have somebody for Superman to punch, which is a big problem, but also it allows you to have Lex as the villain.
Yeah, completely. Absolutely. And I also think it's a really wonderful moment of, I think Superman is portrayed too much as an alien as opposed to a guy, a person. And I think it's just such a wonderful juxtaposition of him being like, I come from Krypton, but Earth is my home, and this is what these are my people, and I'm going to defend them. It's such a Birthright on so many levels. It's just a really perfect Superman origin. That is an essential. But also it has that wonderful moment of Clark being able to sort of gaze back through that hole in time and see his parents and let them know that he did make it.
Yeah, they get to hear that. It's such a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it was so incredible. I also want to say, in my Superman year 2, at the same time as the Superman. Oh, yeah, no, I did say it. Superman for All Seasons happens in Superman year 2 as well, which I love that story.
That is a great story. Age 26, my Superman year 2. This is where Superman first meets Batman, and the two become uneasy allies. Also, during that year, the Cadmus Project begins because Superman's been around for a year.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense.
Superman meets Wonder Woman during this year, and the events of Matt Wagner's Trinity, where it is, Ra's al Ghul and Batman and Wonder Woman. So that also means that that's
their first team up, right?
That is their first team up, because I kind of believe that the Trinity should team up before the Justice League happens.
I agree. I'm with you. I'm completely with you.
And also, if you've read Matt Wagner's Trinity, then that also means that the first Bizarro clone created by Lex Luthor shows up this year. But also, this is the year that Superman builds the Fortress of Solitude.
Superman year 2.
Superman year 2.
So when he's 26, he builds the fortress.
Yeah, I think gotcha. I don't think he would embrace that side. To me, I'm like,
no, yeah.
I just think he would take the year feeling comfortable as Superman, and then in the second year, when he meets a Bizarro clone and he meets these other heroes and he starts seeing this other weird stuff, that's the idea where he's like, I just met this Amazon who is so embedded in her culture. Maybe I should learn some more about mine, because up to my point, like I said, up to this point, Clark knows he's an alien. And he's heard the term Krypton, but that's about all he knows.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I think it's important that Clark doesn't know too much about Krypton too soon.
Yeah, and that's why age 27, Superman year 3, this is the year where I say this is where Clark learns everything about Krypton.
Gotcha. Okay.
His third year as Superman. This is also the year that Lex Luthor gets his kryptonite ring. And this is also the year that, and like you, Darkseid invading the multiverse is kind of just a very clean Justice League origin. So Superman year 3, Darkseid invades and the Justice League is formed. Although Superman doesn't technically join them, he helps them out occasionally.
Gotcha. And he's 28 at this point. Just making sure I'm
27.
tracking.
He's 27.
27. Gotcha.
27. And this is also the year that I put the first Superman Flash race happens.
Gotcha.
So now we move on to age 28, Superman year 4. This whole year to me is a very crazy year, because this is the year I picked that the Anti-Monitor tries to destroy the positive matter universe. This is Crisis on Infinite Earths. So Superman year 4. Barry Allen dies. Superman meets other versions of himself, but basically he saves the multiverse. And it is the whole year.
Gotcha. It's never ending.
Yes, it is a crazy, crazy year. Now, I picked it as this year because I was kind of going off of the 0-year timeline, which, as you'll see, it'll affect things as we move along. So now age 29, Superman year 5. This is when the events of Millennium happens. This is when Darkseid tries to invade again. Brainiac appears for the very first time. And also, Kara Zor-El lands on Earth during this year.
Love it. Love it.
So he's been Superman for 5 years. I also did that because I wanted him to be established as Superman when this teenager girl shows up and tells him that he's doing everything wrong.
I like. So my Supergirl lands in my Superman year 5. I think you have it pretty much the same place.
Oh, all right, cool. Now for the next. My math is off a little bit here. I just realized my math is off, Cameron. Oh boy. Uh-oh. Quick moment here as I up all the ages of my characters.
We're too creative, so obviously the maths was going to be wrong.
Oh, yes. So I have ages 30 to 33, Superman years 6 through 8. This, to me, is where all of the Silver Age stories happen. The Superman Silver Age stories happen in these 3 years. So it's a crazy 3 years. He gets turned into a bug. He gets turned into a lion. Lois Lane wants to become black for that one issue that we're not going to talk about at all. Most of his rogues gallery is introduced in these 3 years. So once we leave this Superman year 8, basically all of the Silver Age will have happened.
Gotcha.
But the great thing about this is that Superman's going to get some cool stuff to come out of this 3 years, because in these 3 years, Krypto shows up, so he gets his dog. Also, Clark Kent publishes his first novel during these 3 years.
Wow.
The Janus Contract. And I don't know if you know this, Cameron. Did you know Clark Kent is a Pulitzer Prize winning author?
I did not.
He is.
I did not. I assumed he was a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. No, he's an author.
He's a Pulitzer Prize winning author. This is when he wins the Pulitzer, is age 33.
Wow. Good for him.
And then also at the very end of his 33rd year, Clark Kent proposes to Lois Lane in Superman number 50.
And there you go. You have your big moment. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I like that.
I wanted to give him his dog, his lady, and his book.
there you go. That makes sense.
Okay, so age 34, and I just want to apologize, everybody. Again, I will be adjusting the numbers as we go along, but I might make a mistake. And if that's the case, then yes, I'm a creative. I'm a writer. I'm not a mathematician of fake Superman time.
Don't worry. We will only ridicule you for years.
Oh, it'll live forever. So Superman year 9, age 34. This is when Panic in the Sky happens, a classic invasion.
Yeah.
This is where Superman joins the JLA as leader. This is the Dan Jurgens Justice League. But also, at the beginning of this year, I see it as in the spring, Superman is killed by Doomsday when he's 34.
Ooh.
So,
all right.
And I picked the spring because I agree, like we talked about before, he stayed as his dead for about a year. And so for the rest of the year, it is Funeral for a Friend.
Yes.
But also at the end of Superman year 9, also Superman year 10, this is where the reign of the Supermen happens. Yep. Superboy, Steel, the Eradicator happen. Cyborg Superman invades Coast City, and eventually during age 35, Superman is revived from death by Kryptonian technology. They defeat Cyborg Superman. Superman gets long hair, and he returns. This is also the year that the fall of Metropolis happens, that downtown Metropolis is destroyed by Lex Luthor's missiles. That happens in Action Comics number 700. And also, 0 Hour Crisis in Time happens here.
Gotcha.
So that way, the last crisis happened about 6 years ago. So
gotcha.
0 hours sort of clearing up. Parallax goes crazy, resets time.
We have 6-year-long crisis cycles.
That's right. Well, I'm trying as much as
possible. That's probably true in publishing history now that I think about it too.
Okay, so age 36, Superman year 11. That is when the death of Clark Kent storyline happens. Kenny Braverman becomes Conduit. He learns Superman's secret identity. And Clark Kent fake dies, or the identity fake dies for a while. This is also a crazy year because Underworld Unleashed happens, where Neuron gives all the villains powers. The final night happens as Sun Eater consumes the sun and plunges Earth into darkness. So Clark loses his powers, but it's okay that he loses his powers because when he's non-powered, he's finally at age 36, he will marry Lois Lane.
Aww.
And he also, before his honeymoon, of course, will publish his second novel titled Under a Yellow Sun, which also wins a Pulitzer.
Good for him. Yeah. Good for him, man.
So age...
Wait, he's 2 for 2 on his novel writing
He is 2 for 2, my friend. He's a good writer. Superman is a good writer.
He's a very good writer, yeah.
I mean, also, we could make all kinds of conspiracies that he's cheating there, but that's not the type of guy Superman is. So I don't.
One of the things that I loved, I can't remember who wrote it. I think it was in an issue of Superman Wonder Woman, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have Superman and Wonder Woman very briefly date, as well as it being alluded to in a lot of stories throughout the years. But they learn a lot from each other, and there's a really great moment where Wonder Woman and Clark are dating, and he's right there in a hotel room, but he's got a story to write. And she says, why did you, just out of curiosity, why did you choose to be a writer when you could do anything? And he said, because I can do all of these amazing things, and I can go to the moon and back in seconds. But it's really hard to write. It doesn't matter if you can type at super speed if you don't know what you're saying. And I thought that was really great, that he finds writing just as hard as a human would.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that is a very interesting. I'm going to hope that that's from Charles Soule's Superman Wonder Woman, because
I think it is. Yeah.
That's an underrated series, by the way. But
it really is. Yeah.
But that is the thing. It doesn't matter how fast you type. If you can't type good, then who cares?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like he's telling a story where, like for the Daily Planet, he's got to write a novel.
All right.
Bloody difficult to do that.
Yeah. So, and he won 2 Pulitzers. Again, like that's a fun fact though about Clark Kent. And I like the fact that he, like one of the greatest lines that Dan Jurgens ever wrote about Superman. It was during the death of Clark Kent's storyline with Conduit, where Lois talks about losing his identity, and Clark goes, he says to Lois, he's like, you don't realize, like, when I think about myself, I think of Clark Kent, and he's like, I'm more excited about winning awards for my writing than I am about flying to the moon and going on an adventure with Justice League.
Yeah. I love that too.
And as soon as I read that line a long time ago, I was like, okay, cool. That's how I see Superman.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that a lot. I like the idea of him going to a Justice League meeting, just being delighted with himself.
Yeah.
He's like, guys, big news. Guess what? Like, I was like, is it Darkseid? Oh my God. And he's like, no, I want a Pulitzer.
Here's a copy of my book.
Yeah, here's a copy of my book. Bruce, could you just endorse my book for me? That'd be great.
Well, you know what? There's a story, because you have to assume that Bruce Wayne owns a bunch of bookstores. So did Bruce Wayne buy like 10,000 copies of both of the books?
Yeah. What if Bruce Wayne bought the movie rights to both of Superman's books? That'd be really funny.
Oh, man. All right. So age 37, Superman year 12. This is where, because Superman is depowered and he's been experimenting with his powers, this is where he turns into Superman Blue. And
gotcha.
For me, he's Superman Blue for at least 6 months. Okay. This is also where Jonathan Kent is born, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I am one of those people that I believe that a Kryptonian and a human cannot have a child. But if Superman is depowered, bada boom, bada bing,
it would make sense.
It would work. And he's been depowered for about 6 months now.
All right. Interesting. That does make sense.
So also during this storyline, that is where during this year 12, DC 1 Million happens. That's where the JLA visit the 853rd century. This is where the King of the World storyline happens, where Kal-El is obsessed with protecting Earth. And the reason why I put that storyline here is because I think Superman is a new parent. And he got very protective about his new baby, and that's why he became very protective about Earth.
Dude, that makes total sense.
So,
it really does add something to these old stories if you consider the fact that he is about to become a father or is a father.
Yes. Yeah. Like it changes his perspective. You're like, oh, he wasn't crazy in that storyline. He was just being an overprotective parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the kind of thing of like, of course, that this would make his current struggle even more important to him personally. Yes. You know, that as well as fighting for the world, he's fighting for the world that his son is going to live in. I think it adds so much to those stories.
Yeah. Also during this year 12, that is where the Y2K, the futuristic Brainiac 13, comes in and transforms Metropolis. Now, the next year, age 38, Superman year 13, that's when Lex Luthor is elected president of the United States. Also, Emperor Joker happens here, and the events of Our Worlds at War happen at the end of this year. I kind of think that the Imperiex invasion sort of happens over year 13 and year 14.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a multi-level conflict.
Yes.
You know, it takes place on so many different planets and stuff like that too, or like out in space or on Earth. Of course, like a big event that I forgot to mention there was Sam Lane dying in that year.
Oh, yeah.
Or quote unquote dying.
I think that's fair because Sam Lane has been like killed and brought back to life so many times that like,
true.
If I'll just say this to the listeners, if we had to make the Sam Lane chronological timeline, we'd go insane.
Oh, absolutely mental. Yes, completely.
Because I believe, he was killed in Our Worlds at War, but then he's alive during Superman Rebirth. And then he was also killed, I think, during Blackest Night or something. No, he was also killed during War of the Superman, I think, as well.
He killed himself during War of the Superman.
Yeah.
In front of Lois.
Yeah.
And then he still came back.
So, oh, good God.
I think he's probably had more resurrections than any other comic book character.
He might
have the record.
People love him, man. People love bringing that guy back. But I get it. Like, you want the angry dad. You want the opposite of Jonathan Kent to yell at Superman.
100%. And also, you love showing what kind of person he is, how suspicious and constantly preparing to take down even his allies. It's just such a wonderful juxtaposition for Lois, because I think as much as Clark loves being Superman, it's really Lois who understands what Superman is and what Superman is all about and why he is so important. Because Clark is sort of almost too humble to get why Superman is so wonderful.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it makes total sense, like Lois growing up with someone like that who is so cynical, seeing this person who is so powerful be so good. You know, the character Sam Lane adds so much to the mythology, even if he is dying every 6 months.
Yes. All right. So age 39, Superman year 14. This is where the events of Superman Batman happen. So Public Enemies happen. So
right.
Luther's only president for about a year, which is, you know, me kind of putting that out into the world. Okay.
I literally, because didn't he also incite the Imperiex War?
He let it. It's funny. So for that storyline, they played really into the conspiracy theory, which I've heard for years, that the idea that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt knew that Pearl Harbor was going to happen and let it happen so that America could get in the war. So in Our Worlds at War, they let Lex get a warning. Lex was like told, like, oh, Imperiex is going to come and he's going to do this. But if you let that happen, we'll give you this. And he took that deal.
Interesting. Yeah, because I had Lex obviously being president for Our Worlds at War. I imagine he's president for about 2 years as well.
Yeah. So then age 40, Superman is 40 now. He's been Superman for 15 years. This is when Infinite Crisis happens. And I put it at this point because Infinite Crisis is a lot about Superman. Not only does he have to deal with Superboy, Connor Kent's death, but he also has to deal with the enemy is a younger him. Yep. And also his ally is an older him, a very old him. And so to me, I was like, you know what? 40 is the best time for that to happen. And also, because of those events, this is the year, I think, because remember, in Infinite Crisis, Superman loses his powers again.
Yeah.
And he and Batman and Wonder Woman decide to take a year off. And I think this is the year that they move to Hamilton County.
That makes sense. That really does make a lot of sense. Yeah.
And because they decide, you know what, we're going to give John the farm life, because although I'm going to change it, for me, Superman stays Superman. It's just that he doesn't live in Metropolis anymore. Because at this point, John is now 4. Yeah. So I think he's like, I want to give him the farm memories. So that's why he does that.
Yeah. I get that. Fair enough.
Age 41, Superman year 16. This is 52. This is the year without Superman. No powers. He's only on the farm. Gotcha. I'm assuming he's going to write his 3rd Pulitzer Prize book.
Going for that. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Age 42, he's been Superman for 17 years. This is when Final Crisis and the death of Bruce Wayne happens.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, because I wanted Final Crisis is a big event. Barry Allen comes back, and also it all comes down to Superman rebuilding the universe. Yeah. See. So in my year of Crisis, you know, where I had literally everything happening, that was how I had it end too. Is because it's the wonderful moment, sort of crafted by Grant Morrison, that Superman saves all of us. He wishes the best for all of us. Wishes the best. That's such a great moment. Yeah. Also, little fun Easter egg for my timeline that I forgot to mention is that I imagine the older Superman who is helping him out during Infinite Crisis is the Superman from Kingdom Come. I like that. So you get elements of Thy Kingdom Come in there as well. I like that too. He's 43 now. Superman year 18. World of New Krypton and War of the Superman happens here. Busy year. I think during this is where he leaves Lois and John on the farm, and he goes and lives on New Krypton for about 6 months, I think. Because Lois is such an amazing wife, she understands. But I could also see Superman being 43. He's a little bit past his midlife crisis, and when this whole society of his homeworld shows up, I could see him being like, I kind of got to go experience that. I got to go. I love you, and but like I have to see what this is like. Yeah, and also, from what I remember of the story, it's a really volatile situation, and like one of the first scenes is like a Kryptonian accidentally kills a whale, and he recognizes very quickly that a whole city filled with millions of people who have his powers is potentially really dangerous. So as much as it's like, I really want to go and see what my culture was and what my world was, I think it's also someone's got to be there to make sure that this is safe. Yes. Yes.
Because also the whole thing ends up being run by Zod.
Yes, and also during that year, because it's tied into World of New Krypton, that's also when Blackest Night happens. So that's where Superman has to deal with, the Black Lantern Kal-El, the old him.
Of course.
Now, age 44 through 46, this is Superman's years 19 to 21. So he's now been Superman for 20 years. Those are the years that I think everything in the New 52 happens. So,
okay.
Justice League versus Suicide Squad. He meets the other people. Like all of those storylines happen in about those 3 years.
Between the ages of
44 and 46.
Okay.
So just put an older Superman in all those storylines.
All right, I see it.
Now, at the end of that year 21, when he's 46, that's when they decide to move back to the city. And at age 47, Superman year 22, this is where the events of Superman Rebirth happens. Jonathan is 11. He becomes Superboy. And this is where Super Sons happens.
Gotcha.
So that's a very good year. They're finally back in Metropolis. And then finally, he is 48 years old. He has been Superman for 23 years. And Superman calls for a press conference and reveals his identity to the world.
Wow.
So when I did this, I was like, man, Jonathan Kent. And so I have an almost 50-year-old Superman. But Superman's our dad. So I kind of feel like I've always looked at Superman as our dad. So to me, it's like, that fits.
Yeah. And you know what kind of, because again, I was listening to your Batman timeline and the way I sort of was checking my Superman timeline was by the other characters too. And if it was like, right, if Superman dies around the time that Tim Drake is in like year one of being Robin, then it sort of can flow together nicely. Like, I mean, we're only 5 years off from each other. Yeah. I have Clark as being 44, and you said it's year 23.
He's been Superman for 23 years.
Yeah. Like literally, I'm only off by 2 years. Like I haven't been Superman for 21 years and him being 44. Like we're very, very close.
Yeah. Because you started.
To me, it makes sense.
Yeah. It works, and I guess it just shows you.
Yeah. He can't be. Yeah, and the thing is, like, you only have him being 2 years older when he becomes Superman. Like, I think that the key thing for both of us was Clark can't be a father in his 20s.
Exactly.
You need to have space for those stories, and also I think, Clark being in his 40s makes all the sense in the world. I only think that there are probably two mainstream heroes who are older than him. I imagine Bruce being a couple years older for whatever reason. And Diana is obviously immortal.
Yeah.
The real question is, and I didn't get into it in my timeline because I think it opens up a whole, Pandora's box, is Superman the first superhero or was there the JSA? Because
you know what? That's an intro. Okay. So it's funny. I'm going to ask you to park this conversation because we were talking about some of your favorite storylines, but you just brought up an interesting conversation that I think we could have over in the Patreon, which would be of the Justice League, who do we think is older or younger than each other?
I love that. I love that very much. So please do that.
That is going to be our Patreon episode, everybody, over at patreon.com/Jawiin. You can only hear that if you support the podcast. Go on over there. It's going to be me and Cameron Cuffe talking about his favorite Superman stories, plus what are the ages of the Justice League? Because I think it's a very, very fascinating discussion. Because as you were bringing that up, I was already like, I think Aquaman is this.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So everyone out there, we always do every week a recommended reading section where if you go to geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading, we have widgets that will take you directly to Amazon that will give you some reading suggestions based on this episode. Today's suggestions are going to be, of course, John Byrne's Man of Steel, which they just reprinted in an amazing hardcover, which I referenced for this several times. Superman's Secret Origin, which is the Jeff Johns Superboy and Lex being in Smallville origin. And then, of course, referenced several times, the third option is Superman Birthright by Mark Waid. Basically, the three main origins that Cameron and I referenced throughout this entire timeline. Go check them out. Go read them if you want to check them out.
So beautifully written, all of them, and the artwork as well in all three is particularly amazing. Like you mentioned in your timeline, that moment where Clark first flies in the John Byrne series, and I can see it in my head. I can see that artwork. It's so beautiful.
I just think it's astounding that Superman is such a flexible character that we can have multiple origins of him, and they're all good.
They're all good and they're all valid. Like, this is what we were saying when we began. It's like there's over 80 years of story. Like, if you like it, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. All right, everyone out there, don't forget that you can subscribe and download this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere you put headphones into your ear holes, you're going to find Geek History Lesson. And Mr. Cameron Cuffe, I know you're around on social media. I see your stuff. Please tell our listeners where they can find you.
Guys, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the Cameron Cuffe.
Nice. Also, everyone, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jawiin, Jawiin. Don't forget the lowest lane to this podcast, Ashley Victoria Robinson. You can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V Robinson. And also, you can support this podcast on patreon.com/Jawiin. You're going to hear Cameron and I talk about more Superman stuff. Last thing of the podcast, Cameron, we always do this section called Stick Around, #Stick Around, where we see if everybody stayed through the plugs. I want to ask you, writing this Superman history, what was the hardest part? Now, you mentioned the crises earlier. Was there something else that was quite difficult about writing this timeline?
The thing is, the way I started kind of makes sense in the way of you have to look at what stories you love the most. And once I sort of took those into account, really the difficult part was just deciding which bits of what I wanted to put in, you know? So for example, like the first team up between Batman and Superman, I chose the grounded J. Michael Straczynski thing, but also there's like a really great Zero issue for Batman Superman that does a take on their classic meeting up and their first team up on the cruise ship. That classic Silver Age story. Yeah, like, and it's the kind of thing of like, well, how do you want to make this work? So other than the crises, and I have to maintain, I think the crises are the most difficult thing, because all of continuity literally changes. Yes. But I think that was probably the tough bit of like, right, when there are, like we said, there are 3 brilliant origins of Superman, but you do have to decide, am I going to go for the space plane rescue? Am I going to go for the helicopter rescue? What is it going to, are you going to go for the Grant Morrison t-shirt and jeans Superman? I think that's the bit where you sort of have to be like, right, what is it really going to be? And I just cheated and I chose the moments and I also had the stories. Yeah,
well, that's the way it works. It's like, for me, even though I didn't mention it, I love the t-shirt and jeans Superman. So to me, in my Superman year 1, somewhere in there, he does become t-shirt and jeans Superman while mom is finishing the suit, Yeah. Like the first thing that she sews is the t-shirt.
and that's, exactly. Because that's the symbol they can see on the ship.
Yes.
And also, like, I imagine that. Well, actually, one question I did want to ask you was, for me, I took the Richard Donner inspiration for the fortress, that it's a crystal that self-replicates and builds the fortress itself. That building the fortress isn't really Clark's idea, and it kind of happens by accident. Because if you think about it, it's this gigantic, monument, which I think Clark would never even think to build.
So that's interesting. So I this is another omission on my part. In the John Byrne Man of Steel, in Man of Steel 1, Jonathan shows him the ship, so he knows it's there. And then in the last issue of Man of Steel, it's gone. Like, the ship is gone. And it's a mystery of like the first couple issues of John Byrne's Superman run of where is my ship. And he finds, I can't remember, like I think it's like a farmhand or something that worked for Jonathan found it and thought it was something valuable. He thought it was like a Russian satellite. And so he stole it. And so Superman finds it like in the first or second year of Man of Steel. So for me, the reason why I put the Fortress of Solitude in year 2 was I was like, okay, he finds the ship again in year 1. And when he finds the ship, like the Sunstone drops out.
I like that.
And then he's like, what is this? And then the thing automatically builds itself or flies out of his hand. Or you could even do, I always loved the Smallville bit where it just transports him into the Arctic.
Yeah, that's a nice idea. Yeah, because it does have to be in the middle of nowhere. You can't have the fortress pop up in the middle of Metropolis.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Geek History Lesson. Cameron, thank you so much again for joining me on this super episode.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It was lovely to hear your timeline. And everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. Go follow Cameron on social media. I have been Jason, sometimes lives on a farm, Inman, and this has been your Geek History Lesson. Class is now dismissed.